Hello class. Today we're going to talk about Graham Allison's classic work, The Essence of Decision. I asked you to read it and to try to identify the key elements of each of the three models, and I just want to spend a couple of minutes this morning to try to make sure we've got the big picture here. There are, as we said, three models, the first two of which you may be quite familiar with. And then the third model, his what he calls governmental politics model, others have called bureaucratic politics model, is actually the model that the book is most known for. So let's start by talking about how well the book is structured, how well it's organized. And this is one of the reasons it's been so successful. He identifies these basic elements of each of the models, and then he reproduces those for each chapter where he's presenting one of these theoretic models. And so you get a consistency, and I think that that really helps the systematic analysis of the three models. In this instance, the first one of the elements, and the one I want to talk about first, is his concept of the unit of analysis. In Model 1, the rational actor model, the unit of analysis is the nation. And that if you have the nation as a single entity, obviously there's going to be a person or structure who is the expression of that point of view. In the United States, that's considered to be the president, and that especially in foreign policy, he is the primary voice. However, in Model 1, what Allison is trying to focus on here is that the president is the entity who is acting on behalf of the nation to identify clearly what the national interests are, what our values are, and to choose in a conscious, evidence-based way what approach will be the best response to a crisis or to some other event that they're making a decision about. How does that differ from the other two? The basic unit of analysis in Model 2 is the organization, and that decisions are made at the organizational level. In our system, usually a U.S. department, agency, bureau, and that if you think of how policies are made by these organizations, you're thinking about what are the behaviors or outputs of the organization. And those are the things you're primarily looking at. And in many instances, you're going to have several organizations whose outputs have to be taken into account. The third model, the bureaucratic politics model, or in Allison's phrasing, the government politics model, in this model, the primary unit of analysis is the individual. And he identifies that there are many, quote, players in the game, and that these players are each working from some vantage point, typically an organization within the government or an organization outside the government that has the clout to be involved in policymaking, and that these individual players, often representing the point of view of their organizations, are trying to influence the outcome of overall policy. But one of the things that Model 3 does is it explains that many times each agency is acting in their own domain, in their own authority area, and the policy is not really a single conscious choice, but rather each of these individual players' actions, and that those add up to what he calls a resultant. And this is why he says a resultant under Model 3 does not always presuppose intention. It is simply how all of these players' activities add up to create a whole, sometimes not a very integrated or well-organized whole. I think today's pandemic is an interesting example of this. You've got all of these units of government and non-governmental actors, each doing everything they can from their vantage point to take the actions they think make the most sense, but that there is not an overarching conscious process of making a single decision and then identifying actors that would implement pieces of it.